Hello and welcome to another Between Sets with Church. Today we are sitting along the beautiful shores of Kempenfeld Bay talking with Gillian Dorella. Welcome to the show, Gillian.
Thank you so much.
How have things been?
Very good, very good. A lot more relaxing than usual since, you know, a lot of things we haven't even done a show since March 14th, 15th. You know, we're not really doing much right now. We're kind of like we are at a standstill. The only thing that's open is the record shop. You know, and we're at reduced hours, you know, so I feel like I'm on still vacation even though I'm not.
Yeah. Going back a little bit, is there music in your family, or did you become a promoter through music?
I became a promoter growing up in Burlington. I had a lot of promoter people and band people in my life that were like living in Burlington. There's the guys from Finger 11, Silverstein, you know, Grade, Jersey. You know, when you grow up in Burlington, you grow up with music. So like, you know, we had the, you know, YMCA shows with Paul Shelton. We had, you know, so much music in our lives. So I really wanted to be a promoter, and Brad Sumac and Ben Rispin kind of like took me under their wing to show me. I tried it myself, and then I got a lot of help from like Ben Rispin, Brad Sumac, and Billy Pozak, who run Club Absinthe. We did shows at a bar called Moe's Tavern back in the day in Waterdown, was where my first show was ever held, and that's where Ben Rispin worked out of. And then when that place left us, like when I was younger, and then they started the Moose Knuckle. That was in Burlington, and I was also doing shows at Club Absinthe with Ben and Billy, and I was also doing Formac with Brad Sumac, and being with those people, they were very, you know, always teaching you, like, you know how to, like, I was always giving bands kind of being like, oh yeah, I could totally do that, you know, yeah, $500, no problem, you know, but it really was a problem because you didn't know, like a band, I didn't understand how. I was very green when I first started, so like, you know, they would be like, you have to lowball, you know, like they want this much, but you need to give them this much, and then you meet, you know, kind of in the middle where, you know, you understand your music scene. Took me a while, you know, I did fall. But with their help, I actually became a really good, you know, hard-headed promoter. And like, you know, then I started getting into bigger bands. And every time in Burlington, if I booked in Hamilton, if I wanted to book a really big band, I would consult those three. I'd call them like my chairman.
Yep.
When it came to shows, I'd be like, Ben, you know, Billy, what do you think about this? And then, you know, Brad, should I do this? And, you know, they want this much money, and they'd be like, yeah, it's too much, offer this much, you know. So they were always my backbone to when I started promoting, and still are, you know, when it comes to like some things. Like I still bug Ben, even though Ben doesn't do promotions anymore. He does like a weed blog and all this stuff. He's doing I forget the name of it. I feel horrible, but Into the Weeds. Okay. And he, you know, does all this really cool stuff, and he travels and he does all that stuff now. So like, I still ask him for advice, but I more bug Billy the most, who's the general manager at Club Absinthe, and Edie, who runs summer camp in London. So like, they're my two main sources that I bug the most right now, because sometimes I still am like, oh, like, did you get this offer? And, you know, like Kyle from he runs the shows in another London venue and in Waterloo. So like, all of us local Ontario promoters kind of all talk to each other now, and we're all like, did you get this offer? Yeah, what did you put in? Like, you know, so it's kind of cool that way.
How did you get into the Barrie scene? Like when you got to Barrie, how did you get involved with Fox Lounge?
That's a funny story. So when I first moved to Barrie, the day I actually moved to Barrie, I went to the Fox Lounge because my friends, Vicky Vale, Tyler, the singer, Tyler Shilabra, used to be my partner in Pure Grain Promos. So his band was playing in this other band from Oshawa called Lungless. They were playing too, so I went down and supported. And Shane, there was 2 Shanes then that were running the show, and I kind of was like, I really want to do shows. I really want to get into it. And I was working for TD then, and I would bug Glenda and Shane every time they came into the bank. I'd be like, let me do shows. So they finally gave me my, here, okay, we're gonna let you do some shows. And they let me in, and they, because the Barrie scene is very family-based, very tight-knit. So like, I was kind of the outsider, but like, it was not like an outsider, more like, like, who is this person, like, because
it's a tough market if you're from out of town, and I've experienced this from other people. Trying to get into the Barrie scene can be difficult. It's one thing to kind of do a visual image online or something, but to get actually in the group and kind of blend in, right, it can be.
It was, but like, it's kind of like, it was funny because like, I've been doing shows now in August will be 16 years. And like, I started in Burlington, Hamilton, and then like I was doing shows in Toronto. I did most of the shows with Jesse Morning and Brad Hicks in Oshawa. Like, I was pretty much like, my name was spread over all the GTA for the last like 15 years. So like, I thought for sure, like, okay, well, they should know me, and I did, like, I do have some friends who are like already in music who knew me in Barrie, and that was kind of my in. It was like, hey, like, let them know that I'm actually a cool person, and I'll bring what people want, and and I started working with Shane and Glenda and the other Shane, and he was doing his comedy still. And it was kind of like, it was a nice mesh, like feeling a part of the team, like family more or less, like being like, okay, like, I'm here, cool, they like me, like, oh, I feel happy. And then when Shane stopped promoting and he was just doing his comedy, this gentleman, Chris Harrington, and I just kind of like took over, and we started doing shows, and we did PQ together. I brought Unearthed.
You've had a lot of good shows. You brought plenty of good shows.
I brought, and like, that's the thing, like with Shane Heath, like, I was like, we could have these big caliber bands. Mm-hmm. And it was when he got offered Cancer Bats with Flatliners, I was like, do it. You need to do it. Like, and he goes, well, it's a 1+1. And he goes, so what does that mean? And I said, well, that means, like, and he knew what it meant, but when it comes to agents, he likes us to deal with them. He was kind of like, okay, cool, like, here you go. And he was just like, okay, like, what do you think? And I'm like, it's going to sell out. Both shows are going to sell out. Like, 2 shows, like, it was a Tuesday and a Wednesday, I think.
Yeah.
And I was like, both shows are going to sell out in minutes. And he did the old school way where, like, you had to come down and you had to line up and you had to get your tickets that way. And he brought back the old school feeling, to the scene, which was awesome. And then, from there, I was like, okay, I want to bring Unearthed. I want to bring these bands. And, he really, like, let me just kind of, like, if he knew that I was going to, I would say, unless I didn't know, if I'd be like, well, I don't know if that band's going to bring a lot of people, like, we'll try it out, we'll so on and so forth. But, like, he always knew that, like, no matter what, we did our research before we brought the band.
Yeah. Well, as a promoter and being a musician that used to do the circuit a little bit more, how do you gain the trust from musicians? Personally speaking, like, and I'm sure many bands can deal with this. You drive to London, Toronto, whatever, and you get your $60 or whatever,
Yeah.
$80, and that's not what you agreed on originally. Is there a wall that you have to build up with the bands, or is there
100%.
like a trust that you eventually build? Because a lot of booking agents that I've dealt with the past usually rip us off.
Yeah, so, like, me personally, when it comes to my shows, so for instance, like if your band's coming into town, and you and I agreed on paying you $100, I build my trust by giving you your money before you even come to our town, or you have it as soon as you walk in the door.
Okay.
And that's where I built the trust, where I was like, you know what, because to be completely honest, like people think, oh, like, you know, I'm a promoter, I don't need your band. No, actually you do need their band. You like, because you don't, like, in the end of the day, like, you don't know who that band knows. You know what I mean? You don't know who that band is dealing with. You don't know who, like, I could be dealing with, you know, Geddy Lee's son, and then I'll even know, you know what I mean? Like, you don't know who you're dealing with at the end of the day. So, like, with me personally, I'm always really, I'm honest, I'm respectful. I'm, like, there's times where I have to tell bands, I gotta do a door deal. And they're like, why? And I'm like, well, I'm like, I haven't worked with you before, like, you know, so on and so forth. And, you know, after a couple times of you coming here, like, we'll see how your draw is, you know. And a lot of bands who are trying to get out of their music scene are 100% okay with door deals, but some bands are just not really, like, they're like, oh, door deal, like, oh, I don't know. And then I'll be like, okay, I'm like, how about this? We'll do like a split. You know, if your band's on tour, you know, like, I'll give you this much money and so on and so forth. So for instance, like Sparrows, you know, we have a really, they're a Toronto-based band, and they have a high caliber, and, you know, we have an agreement, you know, so like when they come to work with me, they know we agreed on this much money, and I give them their money before the doors even open.
That's cool.
And the thing is too, even though we become such good friends, and they're like, dude, you don't need to do this anymore. I'm like, yeah, I do. Like, and like, for instance, like working with a band called Girl from Material. They are members of like all these different bands that formed, you know, this like side group kind of deal. And they're all from bigger bands. And when I booked them, I literally, like, I brought the guy in the back room and he was like, hey, like, what's up? Like, what can I do for you? And I'm like, here you go. And he was like, oh, okay. Like, because he hasn't seen that for so long.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh.
That is rare.
It is rare. And I find that also, like, you know, it helps with the music scene, because that means that all these bands that I work with are gonna turn around and go, hey man, you wanna go on tour? Hit up Gillian and Barry, you know, hit up the, you know, Shane and Glenda and all of us, and they'll help you out, and trust me, they'll make sure that you're taken care of. You know what I mean? And like, yes, there's times where I do have to do a door deal, but when I have a guarantee in play, that guarantee is paid before the band even goes, either like is in our venue pretty much. Yeah. You know, and that's just, it's because being a promoter for a music scene, and the thing is too, like, even like, you know, you have to kind of keep a level of, you know, because if you fall once, the music scene is brutal.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I hurt myself a couple times back in the day, and bands that are like, you know, like all my band friends who, you know, they'll be like, man, they're like, you're still at it, you're killing it. I'm so proud of you that you never gave up, because, you know, we all had our times. And I was like, dude, you learn from your mistakes. And if you don't learn from your mistakes, that's kind of like, you know, that's why when it comes to bands, you have to treat them kind of like a, you know, it's like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Here's your money. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like, have a good day. Like, you know, like, because sometimes you kind of got to stroke the ego a little bit to make sure that at the end of the day, they're happy and they're leaving your venue happy, because you don't want them to leave your venue and be like, I'm never playing there again.
Yeah, yeah. What's your plan B for current situation that we're in, or is there one? Or where do you think we're going to go from here? I know it's kind of a trick question.
It is a trick
but I'm just
question.
wondering if you thought about, is there different ways of doing what you do?
I've had like a couple of people ask me like what I'm gonna do next, and are you gonna do like to be completely honest, like right now the only show that I have that's rescheduled is Cancer Bats with Dead Tired and D-Boy. It was scheduled for May. That couldn't have happened, so we rescheduled it for December. I'm hoping, you know what I mean, that we're allowed to have indoor venues, as long as everyone just kind of like, keeps what they're doing. Like Canada's been really good, but like right now I'm kind of like in limbo. I'm kind of just going, like I'm just sitting there with my paddle going, okay, I'm good, like
surviving like
surviving. And like that's the thing too, like ever since Sunrise reopened, I've had a lot of like people in my store who know I do shows, and they're like, dude, like what are you doing? And I'm like, just coasting until we know, like, because like when Shane and Glenda announced that they let us all of the staff know beforehand what we were having to do, because like even now, if they were allowed to have even a patio, which they can't have, there's still construction, and like there were so many things that would still be in their way. So that's why they shipped, we docked it at, our ship at shore, and we're gonna, they're seeing what happens. We're just kind of like looking out right now and seeing like, okay, like there was one promoter I saw in the States, who I have friends on Facebook, I forget his name, but I saw him like looking for bands for shows, and I was like, I don't know if that's a good idea. Like, because even my American tours, like, were, like, for the Fallen Dreams I was supposed to have DOA. I was, there was so many bands that I was supposed to bring to Barrie with Shane and Glenda before all this happened, that now I'm just kind of, like, agents are peeking up now just to see how I'm actually doing, because they're like, okay, like, you good? And I'm like, yep. I'm like, I just don't know what's going on yet. My venue in Hamilton, Club Absinthe, they had a loophole, which is kind of cool, where our stage is a rolling window. So now you're facing outside, and it's only one solo acoustic guy inside playing in front of a window, like, the window's open, but people are on the patio, social distancing. So, like, that's the only kind of saving grace that, like, I see in venues right now where it's like, okay, you're allowed to do patio, you're allowed to, see that. But right now, I don't know. I have no idea if we're going to be able to do shows this year. Until I see, like, we haven't even hit stage 3 yet. Yeah. Right? So, like, and I think venues were stage 4. So, like, for us to even be like, okay, let's go. And that's why, like, like, all the shows that I had booked, like, even the Creep Show, like, I gave everyone, like, like, I had a couple people who came in the store and bought, like, tickets. I had 6 tickets. I still have their money sitting at the store, like, waiting for them just in case. But the people who have contacted me, like, all 6 people were like, no, like, we're just going to hold on to our ticket and wait. And I'm like, okay, but if you do need your money, like, it's here. But everyone who bought online, I just literally canceled I didn't postpone anything. Yeah. The only show that was postponed was Cancer Bats. That money is still, in waiting because we have a new date. That's the only show that I'm really kind of like, still like, okay, is this gonna happen?
Speaking of the store, we've seen in the last several years, let's say 4 or 5 years, many chains have gone down for the count. Yeah. Some independent stores have gone down for the count. What do you think it is that's allowed Sunrise longevity more than some of the other chains?
personally,
is it? Do you think it's vinyl? Do you think is there a certain?
I think it's the vinyl. I think it's the customer service that we bring to our store. I think it's like the friendliness of our store. Like our store, people think is like the hippie store. Like people are like, they come in and they're like, wow, like I feel like
You do concerts in there as well.
Yeah.
You do the one-on-one kind
yeah,
of
like and
acoustic
like,
stuff,
yeah,
which is very cool.
And it's awesome. Like and like people with Sunrise Records, like it's such an amazing company that I think that people come to our store because really, they want music still. But vinyl is huge, like huge. So yes, I feel that vinyl has really helped us a lot, and like us being reopened was my like saving grace. I was like, yes, like we're back, and like that's all people are coming in and buying right now is they're just missing the feeling of flipping through records again, and they're missing that feeling of not, sitting online and looking at records when they could be sitting in a store flipping for records.
Yeah, it's kind of got a bit of that old-fashioned.
Yeah.
Go to the record store and flip through.
Exactly, like and since we've reopened, it's only been our regulars that have been coming back. Like we haven't seen any new faces. So. Which is it's a good feeling because I was worried that I lost some of my regulars to like online because we were gone for almost 3 months. So like everyone came back. So like I've seen all my regulars and I'm like, okay, good. Like so I feel like, and that's the thing, like we're back vinyl is huge.
Yeah. Where do you think live music is going to go in the next short term or in long term too? I know it's kind of hard to tell, but
I'm almost seeing like all of us being in little bubbles, like what I mean? Like I'm almost like seeing like us being in a concert hall, like in a dome of our own, and having to like walk around in a dome like that. Like I know that sounds silly, but like I don't know, like because I feel like it's either going to be like there's going to be a lot of screening involved, there's going to be or it's only going to be drive-ins. I see this popping up of drive-ins, which personally, in my opinion, scares me. Not because like I think it's a really great idea and I think it's a cool idea, but with live music, I feel it takes away, like you're sitting in your car and you're not, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like like you're either listening to it over the radio or you're, whatever. I just don't feel like it, like someone asked me like, oh, are you gonna try one? And I'm like, no.
It's kind of hard to rock out in your car to some degree. Yeah.
I'm like, I'm gonna wanna have my friends like all around me, and I'm gonna want, like if I'm gonna go to a concert, I don't wanna be sitting in my car, and I'm like, I think it could bring some issues in that, could worry a promoter later on in life, like later on down the road, like, like that, like you don't know, you don't know what people are bringing in. You don't know, how it's going to be, and I don't know. I just think that it's just not the way for me. Like whoever's doing them, I'm all power to you. But just for my promotion company, I have to be with my people. Like, cause even like booking a band, I wouldn't be able to like sit down and talk to them. Like I'd be like, nah, I'm like I can't do that. Like I because like even booking like Bonzamara, they're all bands from like other bands, and meeting them, I was like, oh my god, this guy's from this band, this guy's from this band, and I was even like kind of fangirling a little bit, and like not being able to have that like connection and being like, hey man, like how you doing? Have to stand 7 feet away from you to be like, like no, I'm cool. Like I'm gonna wait.
What would you say are the best highlights of your job? Like highlights and scenarios where you've got difficult bands to work with, because there's always lots of those, and good bands. How do you kind of set them apart?
Well,
if you're difficult,
you're going to be difficult as soon as you walk in the door.
Okay.
The great thing about working with the Fox is we didn't put up with it. Shane told you how it is and how it was. I sometimes didn't even have to say a gosh darn word. But, you know, I feel like if you're, like, I haven't had to deal with any really difficult bands for a long time. I feel like bands now are, like, in the last, like, 6, 7 years, they've kind of taken that chip off their shoulder and realized, like, yeah, you know what, you could be huge in your hometown. You could bring, like, 500 people to your hometown. But if you can't, you know what I mean? Like, if you bring 20 people to Barrie, great. You know what I mean? Like, and you're from out of town. You know, like, I've had bands, you know, who are just thankful now. Like, everyone's just thankful to play out of their own city.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing about the music scene now. I think a lot of the bands, I haven't worked with a lot of bands that have a chip on their shoulder lately. So, like, I think that once this is all over, those bands with the chip on their shoulder are gonna be, like, just like the happiest people to even be like, a door deal. If I'm like, hey man, yeah, I can book your band, but it's only for a door deal, I don't think anyone's gonna have a problem with anything when it comes back to reality of booking shows and being able to be in a venue again. You know, so I think that right now, like, we're all, you know, realizing that, like, there's a lot of things that we took for granted. Like, I took booking, I feel like sometimes I took booking for granted. Like, I look back on it and I'm like, man, like, I had, you know, a home with Shane and Glenda at the Fox. I had, you know, all this kind of like handed to me, and now it's taken away from me, and I don't have that, you know, anymore. So I feel like we're all going to be really grateful when it all comes back down to it. Hardcore bands are the nicest people in the world. I haven't, you know, like back in the day, there's only one band that Shane's had to yell at for me because they had a chip on their shoulder, you know, and, you know, they were being a little ignorant.
They can be like that.
Yeah. And, you know, with bands now, I just feel like they're not gonna have that anymore. They're just gonna be happy to play a show.
Last question.
Yeah.
Make it a quick, short one. What advice can you give to any young bands who want to get their name out there and you know, get their name working with a promoter such as yourself? Don't
be scared to reach out. Don't be nervous. Like, reach out to everybody. Like, who cares? If someone looks at your message, okay, don't let that deter you. You know, some promoters, when it comes to, we do get busy. But, like, come to me first then.
Awesome.
And I'll tell you to go to everybody else.
Thank you very, very much.
You're so very welcome.
Pleasure to chat with you today.
That was awesome. I loved it.
Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.